homage to Buddha Shakyamuni, homage to Manjushri, homage to all the lineage masters. The supreme, profound and subtle Dharma is rarely encountered in eons. Now we hear and follow it. May we realize the Tathagata's meaning. To liberate beings, please generate bodhicitta before teaching. Next, we will continue our study of the Bodhicharyavatara. As you know, the Bodhicharyavatara consists of 10 chapters. The first 3 chapters are about how to give rise to bodhicitta when it has not yet arisen. For those who have not yet generated bodhicitta in their own minds, these chapters explain the methods to do so. This is what is discussed in the first 3 chapters. The first chapter explains the qualities of bodhicitta. The second chapter discusses how to purify one's own minds. The third chapter mainly explains the way to uphold bodhicitta. So these first few chapters are very important. If we want to give rise to bodhicitta in our own minds, we first need to understand what bodhicitta truly is. Once we know its value, we should purify our own mind streams. If our minds are not pure, then bodhicitta will not arise for no reason in an impure vessel. Once our minds are purified, we should then uphold bodhicitta exactly as taught in the Mahayana scriptures. Today we will begin studying the second chapter, chapter 2, Confession of Negativity. From the perspective of the outline, the way to uphold bodhicitta refers to how bodhicitta is upheld in one's own mind stream. Section 2, the way to uphold bodhicitta, divided into 2. 1, the general meaning. 2, the detailed explanation. First, let's talk about the general meaning. This is something everyone should understand. In Buddhism, we often mention terms like general meaning, brief meaning, general aspect, specific aspect, and so on. There are many such terms. And here, the general meaning refers to the main outline, the essential points. In this general meaning, we discuss the nature and categories of bodhicitta. After explaining the nature and categories of bodhicitta, we then discuss how to uphold bodhicitta. When we talk about upholding bodhicitta, we also discuss the object of focus, the spiritual teacher, in whose mind stream can bodhicitta be upheld. That is, who is qualified to uphold it. At the same time, we discuss the way to uphold bodhicitta. Finally, once bodhicitta has arisen in our mind streams, how do we protect and maintain it? If bodhicitta degenerates, how do we restore it? These are the aspects we will cover. So, as we study the general meaning today, please keep in mind that this general meaning is very important. From the perspective of the outline, this is the general meaning of a chapter on confession, but in fact it is the general meaning of bodhicitta as a whole. Bodhicitta is explained here in terms of its main points. It is presented to everyone in a summarized and essential way. So, as we study the general meaning today, please keep in mind that this is very important. Why do I say this? If we know the benefits of generating bodhicitta, which we have already discussed before, how it benefits us in this life and in future lives, what kinds of benefits and merits it brings, everyone should have some understanding of this. Once we know the value and benefits of generating bodhicitta, how do we uphold this bodhicitta? To uphold bodhicitta, we must also be clear about certain things. For example, if we know that something in the world is very beneficial, its benefits are significant. Let me use a household appliance as an analogy. Suppose we want to buy an air conditioner. Everyone thinks, oh, this is very useful in our daily life. First, we recognize its benefits. Once we know its benefits, some people want to buy it. Then we need to understand its nature and quality. This is very important. This is like understanding the nature of bodhicitta. Then we need to know how many types of air conditioners are there. For example, is it domestically made or imported? Among imported ones, there are also different price ranges and categories. Depending on our own financial situation, do we buy an imported one or a domestic one? If our financial situation is not good, it may be difficult to buy the more expensive ones. In the same way, when we talk about the categories of bodhicitta, there is absolute bodhicitta and relative bodhicitta. As ordinary beings, we may only be able to access relative bodhicitta, while absolute bodhicitta is more difficult to realize. Now we discuss the categories of bodhicitta. If I know I have the necessary conditions and I want to buy it and I have clarified the categories, then I can proceed to make the purchase. When buying, we must also consider from the perspective of the object. For example, what kind of factory produced the air conditioner or what kind of company this is. This must be considered. This is similar to the object of focus, the spiritual friend when upholding bodhicitta. Then, after buying the air conditioner, we need to see if it fits our room and climate. We should consider whether it is suitable. This is like checking if we have the necessary qualifications to uphold bodhicitta. From our own side, do we have the necessary qualifications? Do we need to have the 7 types of pratimoksha vows as a basis, or can ordinary beings also receive it? This is something to consider from our own side. Then, if I know the other party can provide it, and I also have the necessary conditions, once all these conditions are met, then the next step is to actually make the purchase. The actual way to buy it may be by phone, or going to the company in person, or through someone else. There are various ways to make the purchase. In the same way, when we want to uphold bodhicitta, do we rely on a spiritual friend, or do we visualize ourselves? Is it necessary to perform a ceremony, or can we do it through visualization? This is the way to uphold it. Later, after the air conditioner has been purchased, how do we protect it during use? This is like after receiving the Bodhisattva vow in our mind streams, how do we maintain and protect the Bodhisattva vow? Finally, if the air conditioner is broken, in such a case, should I buy a new one or repair it? This must be considered as well. In the same way, if bodhicitta in our minds degenerates, should we restore it by taking it again or repair it through confession? The same principle applies here. So although the general meaning section may seem brief, those with wisdom, after knowing the qualities of bodhicitta, will definitely want to take the bodhisattva vow. So what is the nature of the bodhisattva vow? What are its categories? What is the object of focus? Who can receive it? What is the method? How do we protect, restore, and purify it? These are all things we must consider. In today's teaching, we should address all aspects of bodhicitta. Some of these points may have already been mentioned when we discussed the qualities or categories of bodhicitta. But there is no real repetition. Previously, when we explained the verses of the Bodhicharyavatara, we mentioned these points in passing. Here, Tokme Zangpo also explains the categories and nature of bodhicitta, as well as the methods for upholding it, and so on. Today, we will first discuss the general meaning. When we talk about the general meaning, everyone must understand it clearly. This is not the meaning of the verses of the Bodhicharyavatara. When we discuss the detailed explanation, it is an explanation of the meaning of the verses of the Bodhicharyavatara. I think such a simple distinction is easy for everyone to understand. However, when we study, we should be a bit more detailed. This is very necessary. Now, the first point, 1, determining bodhicitta. 2, practicing in accordance with bodhicitta. Section 1, determining bodhicitta, divided into 2, 1, its nature, 2, its categories. First, let's talk about its nature. Generally speaking, if you analyze the treatises of the great masters in detail, you will clearly see that all states of mind included in the Mahayana path are bodhicitta. This is very important. If we look at the various scriptural traditions or the treatises of the great Tibetan and Chinese masters, we will find that all the states of mind mentioned in these treatises that possess the Mahayana quality are all considered bodhicitta. For example, faith and compassion that accumulate merit in the Mahayana, as well as any altruistic actions we perform in daily life. All of these are included within bodhicitta. So, in this teaching, it is clearly stated that whether one practices the Sutrayana or Vajrayana, if there is no bodhicitta in one's mind stream, it is not considered Mahayana. We have already discussed this many times before. There are also stories in the Gelug tradition. For example, there was a practitioner of Yamantaka who, due to insufficient bodhicitta, later became a spirit. There are such accounts. And there was a great master practicing Hevajra who also lacked sufficient bodhicitta at the time and later became a Hinayana practitioner, attaining the result of the Hinayana, not the result of the Mahayana or Vajrayana. Therefore, any state of mind within the Mahayana can all be included within bodhicitta. Conversely, our bodhicitta already encompasses all Mahayana actions and intentions. If there is no altruistic intention, then it is not Mahayana Dharma. Of course, in the Sutra on the Great Awakening Mind, there are also different explanations. What is bodhicitta? It is a mind as vast as space, naturally luminous and without characteristics. This is explained from the perspective of emptiness, recognizing the innate luminosity of our own mind. This is one perspective. From the perspective of relative bodhicitta, as long as it is bodhicitta, it must be an altruistic mind. We have discussed this altruistic mind previously as well. Of course, there are different levels. Generally, in the world, a mother's love for her child is not true bodhicitta. But here, the scope of altruistic mind is quite broad. Therefore, all minds and actions included within such altruism should be considered the generation of Mahayana mind. And in this context, the nature of bodhicitta is, as stated in the Ornament of Clear Realization, although Maitreya Bodhisattva has not yet come to this world to attain Buddhahood and turn the wheel of Dharma, while in Tushita heaven he has already bestowed upon us 5 texts of teachings, also known as the 5 treatises of Maitreya. In the Ornament of Clear Realization, one of the 5 treatises of Maitreya, it is said, the mind generation, for the welfare of others to wish for completely perfect enlightenment. We have discussed this meaning before. What is the nature of bodhicitta? It is the wish to benefit all sentient beings and to help them attain the state of perfect Buddhahood. This is the aspiration. This aspiration is what is truly called bodhicitta. Whether it is aspirational bodhicitta or engaged bodhicitta, it is always inseparable from altruism. This is extremely important. In our own minds, we should carefully examine ourselves. Do we have an altruistic mind? If so, it means that we have bodhicitta in our mind. Of course, as ordinary beings, it is difficult to completely eliminate all selfishness. This may be a bit difficult, but many great masters have repeatedly emphasized in their teachings on bodhicitta that the opposite of bodhicitta is self-clinging. Attachment to self is actually the opposite of bodhicitta. Why is that? Because strong self-clinging makes it impossible to have strong altruism. So in daily life, we should try to reduce self-clinging and strive to combat our attachment to self. If we do so, our self-clinging will gradually decrease, and our altruism will gradually increase. In this way, our bodhicitta will grow and increase. So when generating such bodhicitta, is there still some selfishness? There probably is. Some Kadampa masters in the past used the following analogy. Imagine many people are stuck in a muddy pit, trapped in the mud. At that time, one person really wants to save those around him. He feels great compassion for them, but he himself is also stuck in the mud. He has no ability to save them right now, so he tries his best to free himself first. What is his purpose? It is not just to free himself. His purpose is to save those around him. But as long as he is still stuck, he cannot help them. So before he gets out, it is impossible. Therefore, he tries every possible way to get himself out first and then save them. At this time, does he have altruism? There is altruism, because if he does not get out, he cannot save them. What is his main purpose in getting out? It is not for his own happiness or liberation, but to save them. So for us now, as ordinary beings, when we generate bodhicitta at the beginning, it is impossible to have no self-interest at all. But having a little is not contradictory. That is, I must attain Buddhahood as soon as possible. Just as it is said in the Perfection of Wisdom in 25,000 lines, if you wish to attain the perfect enlightenment of a Buddha, you must study Prajna Paramita. If you wish to attain the result of a Shravaka Arhat, you must also study Prajna Paramita. If you wish to attain the result of a Pratika Buddha, you should also study Prajna Paramita. In the same way, if we wish to attain our own result without studying Prajna Paramita and developing altruistic faith, we cannot truly attain such a result. So, regarding our motivation, some Dharma friends may wonder, oh no, as ordinary beings, our selfishness can never be completely eliminated. If it cannot be eliminated, is it possible to have genuine bodhicitta? Some may analyze it this way, but in fact, even while self-clinging exists, bodhicitta can also exist. Of course, as ordinary beings, no one expects us to completely eliminate self-clinging. If that were required, then we would not be ordinary beings but already be noble ones. So we should analyze carefully about aspects of bodhicitta. In summary, bodhicitta means benefiting others. But as I have repeatedly mentioned before, there are many ways to benefit others. The ultimate way is to wish for them to attain Buddhahood, and in the temporary way we must want to help others. I truly believe that for us as practitioners, as people learning the Dharma, we must always maintain an altruistic mind. Many spiritual teachers in the past have said the same. Bodhicitta means that whether walking, standing, sitting, or lying down, we should always remember to help sentient beings, to help others. This is the kind of mindset we should have. And this altruism should not just remain in our hearts. Whenever we have an opportunity to help others in any situation, we should put this intention into action. For example, we see a large stone on the road as we pass by, and we think, oh, this might affect other pedestrians or it might affect vehicles passing by. Then someone with a kind heart might move the stone to the side of the road. However, someone who hasn't developed bodhicitta might not be so considerate and could even move the stone into the middle of the road. People with kind intentions tend to act in helpful ways, while those who are less mindful of others may sometimes act in ways that cause harm. When we cultivate bodhicitta, we should make an effort to let go of such unhelpful behaviors. Whether we are in a group setting or in private interactions, we must always apply the altruistic intention that we promised before the Buddhas and Bodhisattvas, and we should apply it unconditionally, not seeking any reward. For example, if I do something nice today, will others praise me in the future? Will I get some reward later? Or will I experience some personal happiness in a future life? These kinds of aspirations are more typical of a Shravaka practitioner. As practitioners of the Bodhisattva path, it's best if our motivation goes beyond this. Whenever I help others, whether others know about it or not, it doesn't matter. As long as others experience even a little happiness or joy, that is the meaning of my life in this world, nothing more. If we can maintain this kind of mindset, then we are genuinely bringing bodhicitta into our daily life. So I sincerely hope that as we study bodhicitta this time, while we are learning about bodhicitta, it should not just be thoughts in our minds every day. The spirit of bodhicitta also should be reflected in our actions. For example, over the course of a year, how many people have we helped? How many sentient beings have we helped? In this regard, everyone should reflect on themselves. We should summarize our own practice of bodhicitta. If possible, try to keep a daily journal. For example, today I saw an elderly person who seemed to have difficulty walking. I helped them a little. That is also an unconditional act of altruism. Or today, when I saw an ant crossing the road, I saved the ant and put it in the grass. This too is an unconditional act of altruism, about the way of benefiting others. I think in daily life there are so many sentient beings around us. We are constantly interacting with and living among countless sentient beings. If we truly want to help, we can help, even if we haven't saved someone's life in our daily interactions. When others criticize or speak harshly to us, try to be patient. This is also a strength gained from practicing bodhicitta. So in this study of the Bodhicharyavatara, I hope we can develop a stronger, unprecedented altruistic mind. An altruistic mind that is different from before, stronger than ever. With such an altruistic mind, gradually we can direct this altruism toward the goal of Buddhahood. For the sentient beings we connect with, when we help or save them today, let them gradually enter the path to Buddhahood and ultimately attain perfect enlightenment. This is our ultimate goal. Of course, it's not as if we help someone today, give them an empowerment, and tomorrow they become a Buddha and fly away. It's not that simple. And for those of us who generate bodhicitta, there is no such high expectation. Some people used to say, I have taught so much Dharma to others, but it seems to have had no effect. Now, after so many years, those people are still the same. Actually, this is because we don't fully understand some Buddhist principles. So if we set our expectations too high, sometimes we may feel disappointed or things may not go as we wish. So for myself, even if I just do a small thing each day, Helping sentient beings a little gives me a sense of comfort. Of course, I myself am still learning and working on this, and when I emphasize it to you, perhaps some people might even find it amusing. As what is said in the main text of the Bodhicharyavatara, even my own body is offered to sentient beings. So whether others laugh at me, criticize me, or even treat me unkindly, I try to remember that everything I have is dedicated to sentient beings. Thinking this way helps me feel more at ease. If we are always focused on ourselves, always feeling as if others are causing us trouble, and viewing those around us as adversaries, then it will be very difficult for bodhicitta to truly develop. So the main obstacle to generating bodhicitta is our attachment to self. It's important to recognize this clearly. As our self-clinging diminishes, our bodhicitta will naturally grow. This is what we have just discussed, the nature of bodhicitta. Now the second point, the categories of bodhicitta. Generally speaking, from the perspective of the bhumis, there are 4 types. Bodhicitta of aspiring conduct in ordinary beings, bodhicitta of pure noble intention in the impure 7 bhumis, the bodhicitta of full maturation in the 3 pure bhumis, and the bodhicitta free from all obscurations at Buddhahood. This was mentioned earlier. In the ornament of Mahayana Sutras, these 4 types of bodhicitta are explained. From the initial generation of bodhicitta up to the path of accumulation and the path of joining, these 2 paths are called the stage of ordinary beings. At the stage of ordinary beings, the bodhicitta is called bodhicitta of aspiring conduct. What is bodhicitta of aspiring conduct? It is a deliberate intention, a special resolve. I want to liberate sentient beings, I must help them. We are always reminding and supervising ourselves in this way, or we set requirements for ourselves. This is how we generate bodhicitta. This is called bodhicitta of aspiring conduct. Benefiting sentient beings is something I am willing to do, something I need to do. This attitude is called bodhicitta of aspiring conduct. Then in the impure 7 bhumis, from the 1st to the 7th, this is called bodhicitta of pure noble intention. Why is it called so? Because at that time, from the 1st to the 7th bhumi, one can exchange self and others, seeing them as equal. At that point, selfishness is said to be eliminated. Once it is eliminated, this bodhicitta is extremely pure. The mind at that time is not like that of ordinary beings. There are always some self-clinging and impure thoughts mixed in as ordinary beings. At the 1st bhumi and above, the bodhicitta is pure in intention. Then, from the 8th bhumi onward, it is called the 3 pure bhumis. The bodhicitta at the 3 pure bhumis is called bodhicitta of full maturation. Those who have studied the Abhidharma Kosha will know the so-called result of full maturation means that whether you wish for it or not, the result will inevitably ripen on yourselves. This is called the result of full maturation. After the 8th bhumi, when you benefit and help sentient beings, it happens effortlessly. There is no need for deliberate effort or manipulation. It happens naturally, like a river flowing downstream. It arises spontaneously. This is called bodhicitta of full maturation. Then, at the stage of Buddhahood, all afflictive and cognitive obscurations, including even the subtlest habitual tendencies, are completely eliminated. At that point, the wisdom in one's own mind stream is perfectly realized. This bodhicitta is called bodhicitta free from all obscurations. Therefore, as stated in the ornament of Mahayana Sutras, that spiritual intent is classified on the different levels in relation to interest: pure superior intention, distinct full maturation. Full maturation here means a unique quality that distinguishes it from the previous 7 impure bhumis, and likewise freedom from obscurations. So the last one is bodhicitta, free from all obscurations. These are the 4 types of bodhicitta. Just now we divided bodhicitta from the perspective of the bhumis. From ordinary beings to Buddhahood, there are also 4 types of bodhicitta. There is also another way to categorize bodhicitta, by contributory factor and analogy, resulting in 22 types of bodhicitta. So how are these types of bodhicitta distinguished? They are distinguished by 2 aspects. One is by contributory factor, and the other is by analogy. This method of analysis is stated in the Ornament of Clear Realization, because in the Ornament of Clear Realization it first explains 8 categories, then 70 topics, and after a brief explanation it goes into a detailed explanation. When giving the detailed explanation, it discusses the generation of bodhicitta. The generation of bodhicitta is actually one of the 10 aspects of omniscience. Among these, the first is the generation of bodhicitta. The 2 lines we just discussed refer to the nature of bodhicitta, and this is from the perspective of its categories. In the main text, it is stated as follows in the Ornament of Clear Realization. Then there are its 22 aspects, similar to the earth, gold, the moon and fire, a treasure, jewel mine and the ocean, a vajra, mountain, medicine and guide, a wishing jewel, the sun and a song, a king, a treasury and a great highway, an excellent horse and a spring of water, sweet-sounding music, a river and a cloud. Altogether, it lists 22 types of bodhicitta. These 22 types of bodhicitta actually span from the path of accumulation up to the end of the 10th bhumi. According to the view of Longchenpa, from the path of accumulation as an ordinary being up to the end of the 10th bhumi, the 22 types of bodhicitta are present throughout these stages. Or according to the Indian master Haribhadra, from the path of accumulation up to the preparatory, main and subsequent stages of Buddhahood and up to Buddhahood. These are explained in 3 aspects. This way of explanation is like this. It is explained from 2 aspects, analogy and contributory factor. The first is like earth. This refers to the path of accumulation. The path of accumulation is divided into the lesser, intermediate, and greater path of accumulation. The aspiration of the lesser path of accumulation for bodhicitta is like the earth, because the earth is the basis for all virtues. So the aspiration of the lesser path of accumulation is actually the source of all virtues. This is the bodhicitta of the lesser path of accumulation, like the earth. Then, the intermediate path of accumulation, its bodhicitta is like gold. Because the nature of gold does not change, the bodhicitta of the intermediate path of accumulation is unchanging. The bodhicitta of the greater path of accumulation is like the waxing moon. The moon increases, and so do the virtues of the greater path of accumulation. These are the analogies and contributory factors for the 3 types of bodhicitta on the path of accumulation. Then the bodhicitta of the path of joining is like blazing fire. Blazing fire can destroy all the fuel of its obstacles. The bodhicitta of the path of joining can eliminate all the conceptual obstacles between the path of joining and the first bhumi. From treasure onward, the analogies correspond to the 10 paramitas. The bodhicitta corresponding to the paramita of generosity on the first bhumi is like a great treasure, which can fulfill all beings' needs. So the generosity of a first bhumi bodhisattva can satisfy all beings. The bodhicitta of a second bhumi bodhisattva is like a mine of jewels, the origin of all treasures. The paramita of discipline is the source of all virtues. The bodhicitta of a third bhumi bodhisattva is like the great ocean. The ocean is not disturbed by any storm. Likewise, the bodhicitta of a third bhumi bodhisattva is not destroyed by obstacles, such as anger and so on. The bodhicitta of a fourth bhumi bodhisattva is the perfection of diligence and is like a vajra. A vajra cannot be destroyed by any other metal. In the same way, the bodhicitta of a fourth bhumi bodhisattva cannot be destroyed by obstacles such as laziness and other conceptual faults. The bodhicitta of a fifth bhumi bodhisattva is the perfection of meditative concentration and is like most majestic of mountains, which is not easily shaken by storms. So the bodhicitta at the fifth bhumi is immovable and we cannot become distracted by focusing on concepts. The bodhicitta of a sixth bhumi bodhisattva is the perfection of wisdom, like a great medicine that cures all illnesses of the emotional obscurations and the cognitive obscurations. The bodhicitta of a seventh bhumi bodhisattva is the perfection of skillful means and is like a virtuous guide. A friend never abandons those close to them, and bodhisattva of the seventh bhumi will not forsake the welfare of all sentient beings. the bodhicitta of an 8th Bhumi Bodhisattva is the perfection of aspiration and is like a wish-fulfilling jewel which can fulfill all the wishes of sentient beings. At the 8th Bhumi, the Bodhisattva uses the nectar of the Dharma to effortlessly fulfill all beings' wishes. At the 9th Bhumi, the perfection of strength is complete, and the bodhicitta is like the sun. The sun dispels all darkness and matures the crops of all virtuous qualities. This is the 9th Bhumi. The 10th Bhumi is the perfection of primordial wisdom and is like the song of a Gandharva. A song brings happiness and joy to countless people. At the 10th Bhumi, through wisdom, the Bodhisattva brings happiness to countless sentient beings. These are the 10 paramitas and their corresponding types of bodhicitta. After these, then there are 5 categories endowed with the super knowledges and so on, each with have a corresponding type of bodhicitta. The first is the bodhicitta of complete supercognitions and is likened to a king who cannot easily be overcome or controlled by others and can master all. The miraculous power of the pure ground can master all everything, and it can subdue everything. Then the bodhicitta with the accumulations of wisdom and merit is like a treasury which contains everything needed. Those who possess this type of bodhicitta have all their accumulations and all virtuous qualities are complete. Next, the bodhicitta that possesses the 37 factors of enlightenment is like a great highway, which all noble beings take this path. Another is the bodhicitta of complete compassion and vipassana, which is like an excellent horse, not falling into the extremes of samsara or nirvana and carry us to non-abiding nirvana. Finally, there is the bodhicitta of complete retention and eloquence, which is like a spring of water, because a spring never runs dry. The qualities of a bodhisattva on the pure ground are also inexhaustible. These 5 categories of bodhicitta are called the 5 special paths of the 10th Bhumi. The next 3 types of bodhicitta are said to be included either within the bodhisattva of the 10th Bhumi or within Buddhahood. There is some debate about this. When we previously studied finding rest in the nature of mind, I also introduced this topic, so some of you may already have a general idea. These categories of bodhicitta are explained in Ascertainment of the 3 Types of Vows in Great Chariot. Commentary on resting in the nature of mind, I don't remember every detail, but the general understanding is as I've just described. You should analyze this further on your own if you wish. Here, when it comes to the 10th Bhumi, the Bodhisattva benefits sentient beings with the melodious sound of 3 types of Dharma. One type of bodhicitta is likened to a joyful music. There is also a type called the mind of equality, or the bodhicitta of the single path. This type of bodhicitta is like the flow of a river. Its altruistic activity never ceases. The last is the bodhicitta in conjunction with the dharmakaya, which is like a cloud. One who possesses this type of bodhicitta is said to reside in Tushita heaven, in the heavenly realm. But the nectar-like rain that appears from the melodious sound of benefiting others can also be enjoyed in this world. So, regarding these last 3 types of bodhicitta, some scholars, such as Haribhadra and others I mentioned earlier, believe they are included in the preparatory, main, and subsequent stages of Buddhahood. But Longchenpa says that there cannot be a subsequent stage in Buddhahood because the activity of a Buddha in benefiting beings is boundless and never ends. So this is established from the perspective of the 10 Bhumis. There are such explanations. In Tibetan Buddhism regarding the 22 types of bodhicitta, whether they are included in the path of learning or the path of no more learning, etc., there is some debate on this point. Of course, most of the audience this time may not have received very formal Buddhist education in the past. So today, I won't go into the debates between the Sakya, Gelug, and Nyingma traditions, or the debates among their great masters here. Many people may not be interested in that. If we have the opportunity next year, when we teach the 22 types of bodhicitta in the Ornament of Clear Realization, we can go to more detail at that time. For today, I'll keep it simple. In summary, our bodhicitta, from ordinary beings up to Buddhahood can be divided into 22 types. Maitreya Bodhisattva used 22 analogies and contributory factors to explain the characteristics of bodhicitta in this way. This is what we just discussed from the perspective of the stages and paths. Now, from the perspective of how bodhicitta is obtained, there are two types: that which is obtained through names and concepts first, and that which is obtained through names and concepts. It is obtained such as through rituals, through the instructions of the teacher, and so on. Like in the extensive biography of Shakyamuni Buddha, there are ways of obtaining it through power, or through one's own causes, or through symbolic representation. There are many ways. This is a way of obtaining bodhicitta through symbolic means. Relative bodhicitta is obtained through such rituals. This is the first way. The second way is to obtain it through the nature of phenomena. By realizing the nature of all phenomena, one attains absolute bodhicitta. So, from the perspective of how it is obtained, there are two types. Or, from the perspective of the object of focus, there are two types: relative bodhicitta and absolute bodhicitta. This was also mentioned earlier. In the Nirvana Sutra, this classification is made from the perspective of the object of focus, because the true nature of all phenomena is either the relative truth or the absolute truth. There is nothing beyond these two. So, the object of focus for us now should be both the absolute and the relative. From this perspective, bodhicitta is divided into absolute bodhicitta and relative bodhicitta. Then, from the perspective of intention and conduct, just as stated in the verses of the Bodhicharyavatara, there are two types: aspirational bodhicitta and engaged bodhicitta. This is the classification found in the Avatamsaka Sutra. This was also mentioned earlier. The most relevant classification for this context is the last one. So in this context, the classification method used in the Bodhicharyavatara is based on the Avatamsaka Sutra, that is, the last classification. In other words, it is divided according to intention and conduct, or intention and practice. Why is it divided by intention and practice? We discussed this previously. I aspire to reach that state. This is from the perspective of aspirational bodhicitta. Then, from my actual actions, the bodhicitta contains both actual actions, and one's mindset is called engaged bodhicitta. So, in our study this time, we are following the classification from the Avatamsaka Sutra, also as in the Perfection of Wisdom in 25,000 lines, for example, from the path of accumulation, path of joining, path of seeing, path of learning, and path of no more learning. These 5 paths are also called 5 types of bodhicitta, and the 10 paramitas are also called 10 types of bodhicitta, and so on. Different sutras have different perspectives, and there are many ways of analysis, but here we should have a general understanding of the categories of bodhicitta and which type are you actually upholding. If you are a bodhisattva of the first bhumi, you should practice with the bodhicitta of absolute truth of the first bhumi. If you are on the path of accumulation, use the bodhicitta of the path of accumulation. If on the path of joining, use that. If you are none of these, then perhaps your bodhicitta is not yet true bodhicitta. Of course, if you haven't even entered the path of accumulation, but you genuinely wish to benefit sentient beings, then from a broad perspective, you are also entering the path of accumulation. Of course, within the lesser path of accumulation, there are even smaller divisions. Many people now, regarding other teachers, also refer to them as small, small, big, big, or medium, medium. They don't directly say who is big, big, small, small, or medium, medium. So in our own minds, perhaps we haven't even started the lesser path of accumulation. Maybe we just have a very small kind of bodhicitta. So regarding the categories, my introduction in this way is fine. Section 2, practicing in accordance with bodhicitta, divided into 3. 1. The way to receive the vow. 2. The way to protect the vow. 3. The way to restore the vow. Section 1. The way to receive the vow, divided into 3. 1. The object of focus for receiving the vow. 2. The individual who receives the vow. 3. The ritual for receiving the vow. Earlier, I used some analogies to explain this. First, section 1, the object of focus for receiving the vow. We have already discussed the nature of bodhicitta and the categories as well. Now, when it comes to the object of focus for receiving the vow, is it in front of a teacher or in front of the Buddha, an arhat, or some other object of focus? This is the question we will discuss next. As stated in the Brahma's Net Sutra, one receives the transmission and the vows from someone who upholds the bodhisattva trainings and who truly possesses the vows. So whether it is the transmission of bodhicitta or the bodhisattva vow itself, in front of what kind of person should the vow be received? In one's own mind stream, there must be the bodhisattva vow, someone who has generated bodhicitta and whose bodhisattva vow has never been broken. It must be received in front of such a teacher. So when we wish to receive the bodhisattva vow, first we must carefully observe whether this teacher has the bodhisattva vow. Did they generate bodhicitta? If so, did they later break it? If not, then it seems this person truly has a strong altruistic mind. Such a person definitely has bodhicitta in their minds, so I seek them out. Because in the Brahma's Net Sutra, there is only one requirement, that the teacher must have the bodhisattva vow in their mind streams. This one requirement is enough. There are no other requirements. It doesn't matter whether the teacher is good looking or whether they sing or dance well. Some people nowadays choose teachers based on such things. I want to find a teacher who sings very well, or I want a teacher with a certain reputation or prestige. There are different ways of choosing, but these are not very important. The most crucial point when receiving the bodhisattva vow is whether the teacher actually has the bodhisattva vow. In some places, people ask whether there is an official certificate for the vow. If there is, they will receive the vow from that teacher. If not, they won't. I have heard of such cases, but I think these are not important. The first and most important thing is whether the teacher from whom you receive the vow has the bodhisattva vow. This is the main point discussed here. If someone has never generated bodhicitta, if they don't even know what bodhicitta is, and you receive the bodhisattva vow from such a person, it will not work. If the teacher doesn't even know what bodhicitta is, if you ask them, what is bodhicitta? If they don't understand it at all, if they have never even thought about benefiting others, and only think about their own wealth, achievements, and so on, then it is not appropriate to receive the bodhisattva vow from such a teacher. It simply won't work. Not to mention empowerment in Vajrayana, which is even more strict. So when we look for a teacher, we must observe whether the teacher has the bodhisattva vow or whether the teacher has received Vajrayana empowerment. There was a story about this. A teacher heard that a great master was about to give an empowerment of the treasures of Tirton Ratna Lingpa. When it came time for the empowerment, he was very eager to receive it. Of course, this person was also a remarkable master. He asked the teacher, "Venerable, are you giving an empowerment soon? If so, from which teacher did you receive it?" "In the lineage of the Tirton from whom you receive it." The teacher couldn't answer, so he became suspicious and didn't attend the empowerment. Actually, this kind of caution is very necessary. If we are to receive the bodhisattva vow from a teacher, we must first understand, what is the teacher's altruistic mind like? Does the teacher truly possess the necessary qualities in front of a truly qualified teacher? Or if the teacher themselves has generated this mind of bodhicitta, it is very important to understand this. I think this is crucial. This is the first point. Then, as stated in the 20 verses on the bodhisattva vow, the great Indian master Chandra Gomin composed the 20 verses on the bodhisattva vow. This text contains 20 verses and is dedicated to the rules of the bodhisattva vow. It says, one should receive the vow in front of a teacher who is disciplined, wise, and powerful. This means that when we receive the bodhisattva vow, it should be from someone who has the bodhisattva vow and pure discipline. That's the first point. Second, they should be well versed in Mahayana Buddhism and possess excellent wisdom. Third, they should have the ability to guide and transform disciples. They must have this ability and motivation. A teacher who possesses these three qualities is someone from whom you can receive the bodhisattva vow. So, from the perspective of the 20 verses on the bodhisattva vow, there are 3 points we must remember. Check whether the teacher has discipline and wisdom. If they have bodhicitta but no wisdom at all, that may not be sufficient. However, some great Kadampa masters have said whether or not they are eloquent is not so important. What matters is whether they truly have an altruistic mind. Geshe Patowa often told his disciples, even if someone can recite thousands of scriptures, one may not necessarily benefit sentient beings. But if they have a genuine, uncontrived altruistic mind, they will definitely benefit sentient beings. So masters always especially praised those who truly have an altruistic mind in their mind streams. This is highly praiseworthy. Here the requirements may differ. It has already been said that the teacher should have wisdom as well as the ability to guide and teach disciples. In front of such a teacher, we can receive the Bodhisattva vow. These are the three main points. This treatise also says this refers to the Bodhicharyavatara. We will study these verses later on. Even at cost of your own life, never forsake the spiritual friend who's learned in the Mahayana and great in the Bodhisattva vow. This means that the teacher from whom we receive the Bodhisattva vow, what kind of Mahayana teacher should it be? Even in the face of danger to their life, they would never abandon or turn away. They possess skillful means in Mahayana Dharma. That is, no matter what difficulties they encounter, they will never abandon Mahayana Dharma and have unwavering faith. Second, in their mind streams, they must have the Bodhisattva vow. These are the 2 points mentioned here. Such a teacher is extremely rare and precious, called a precious spiritual friend. A true guru, a Rinpoche, 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 this is what is meant by a guru Rinpoche. That is, a teacher who is truly like a wish-fulfilling jewel. 1, no matter what, will never abandon Mahayana Dharma, and 2, has an altruistic intention in their mind streams. In front of a teacher with these 2 qualities, you can receive the vow. So, when we receive the Bodhisattva vow, here, the requirement is already very clear. Among those listening today, there are all kinds of people. Some may have already received the Bodhisattva vow, some may not have even received the lay precepts, and some may be preparing to receive it this time. During the process, if you wish to receive it in front of a spiritual friend, you must do it in this way. Observe whether the teacher possesses these qualities in their minds. If they do, you can receive the vow in their presence. This is the method of receiving the vow in front of a spiritual friend. If you really cannot find such a spiritual friend, a teacher with discipline, wisdom, and ability, no matter what, you just can't find one. No matter how you have searched for them, you simply can't find anyone. Then you can receive the vow in front of the 3 jewels, in front of a Buddha statue, a stupa, or a scripture. In front of the 3 jewels, we can receive the vow. First, make 7 branches offerings, then prostrate ourselves. After prostrating, visualize in our mind, I am receiving the Bodhisattva vow today in front of the 3 jewels. For the benefit of boundless sentient beings, may I never abandon bodhicitta in all my lives. Then, after generating firm resolve, we begin to receive the vow in front of the 3 jewels. Of course, when receiving the vow in front of the 3 jewels. In the past, some Kadampa Geshis, such as Dromtompa, asked Lord Atisha, should we recite the ritual or not? Later, Lord Atisha said, if in your mind stream you have truly generated bodhicitta and altruism, then it is fine even if you do not recite the ritual. Just make the aspiration in our heart. This is sufficient. Of course, if our mind is not very clear, then it is good to recite the ritual as we usually do. Recite the ritual and make aspirations at the same time. This is very necessary. So if it is difficult to receive the vow in front of a spiritual friend, or you simply cannot find a suitable teacher, in many cities, people often say, we really want to find a good teacher now, but the teachers who come, we don't know if they are good or not. So we are a bit afraid. If we don't go to these teachers, not receiving empowerment or Dharma instructions, we may never have the opportunity. Many people worry that they can't find a good teacher. I think, sure. For other Dharma practices, I can't say, but for the Bodhisattva vow, we can receive it in front of the 3 jewels. In the past, some disciples asked Lord Atisha whether entering the Sutrayana and entering the Vajrayana are the same. So they asked. At that time, Lord Atisha said they are completely different. If it is Sutrayana, we can enter it by yourself. For example, if we want to take refuge, we can do so in front of the 3 jewels. When we receive the Bodhisattva vow, we can do so in front of a Buddha statue. That is already sufficient. although the Buddha statue may not immediately give us a certificate. For example, if we go to a monastery, we may not have faith in the monks there. If we really cannot generate faith, then in front of the Shakyamuni Buddha statue in the main hall, just make the aspiration and generate bodhicitta. After generating bodhicitta, even if we don't have a certificate, since the monks may not issue one and the Buddha statue may not either, I think this is not very important. You can even give yourself a Dharma name, just joking. Nowadays, many people care a lot about names. In fact, we have already received the Bodhisattva vow. What I just said is also Lord Atisha's meaning. For Vajrayana, we must rely on a teacher to enter. Because in Vajrayana, to enter the mandala, we must receive empowerment. Without empowerment, it is not possible. But can empowerment be done through visualization? There are two views on visualization. According to Lord Atisha, we must receive empowerment from another teacher. In Buddhist history, for example, in the past, Garab Dorje, Jnana Sutra, many masters, although they met previous lineage teachers in their visualization and directly saw previous lineage teachers. Still, in order to receive the transmission, they later relied on live teachers such as King Za and so on. So, in Vajrayana, we must rely on another teacher to enter the path and receive the Vajrayana vows. But in Sutrayana, it is possible to rely on our own power to become a Mahayana Buddhist ourselves. This is acceptable. So, if we really cannot find such a spiritual friend, we can receive the vow in front of the three jewels. This is stated in the Bodhisattva Bhumi chapter of the Yogacara Bhumi. The Compendium of Training says, if there is no spiritual friend, then to the best of one's ability, visualize all the Buddhas and Bodhisattvas of the 10 directions as present and receive the vow in their presence. In other words, we can visualize ourselves in the presence of all the Buddhas and Bodhisattvas and receive as many vows as we are able, whether for those of sharp faculties or dull faculties. In any case, we can receive the Bodhisattva vow in front of a Buddha statue. We can receive the Bodhisattva vow in this way. Therefore, here we must be clear, if we really cannot find a teacher, in this situation, I think it is safer, either as stated in the Compendium of Training. Visualize all the Buddhas and Bodhisattvas of the 10 directions, including our lineage teachers, all present before us, and receive the vow in their presence. Or, as stated earlier in the Bodhisattva Bhumi chapter of the Yogacara Bhumi, receive the vow in front of the three jewels. This is very important for us. I hope that everyone listening to the Bodhicharyavatara teachings this time, it would be best if we could receive the Bodhisattva vow ourselves. Of course, as we discussed earlier about the Bodhisattva vow, if we truly cannot uphold the others, as long as we do not abandon the aspirational bodhicitta, the merit is still immeasurable and boundless. We should uphold it. Otherwise, our lives are very short. No one can guarantee when we will meet such a wish-fulfilling teacher again. We must uphold it. I join my palms and pray that everyone recognize and seize this rare opportunity. Some people, for example, may regret missing out on a certain job or not receiving a certain award and feel they missed an opportunity. I think these are not real losses. If we have a chance to receive the great Mahayana Bodhisattva vow, which we could have upheld in our own mind streams, but we hesitate or miss it for some reason, that is truly a pity and a real loss. Therefore, it is best for everyone to receive the Bodhisattva vow. Next, we discuss section 2, the individual who receives the vow. Although the Bodhipattha Pradipa says, this is also a teaching of Lord Atisha, only those who always possess one of the 7 types of pratimoksha vows can have the Bodhisattva vow. Others do not have this virtue. We often encounter this verse. Here it explains the requirements for someone to receive the Bodhisattva vow. First, one must possess one of the 7 types of pratimoksha vows. The 7 types are the vows of bhikshu, bhikshuni, novice monk, novice nun, male lay practitioner, female lay practitioner, and the training nun. That is, one must have at least one of the pratimoksha vows. From the Hinayana tradition, if this condition is not met, one cannot receive the Bodhisattva vow. But if the basis for the Bodhisattva vow must be someone who possesses the Shravaka pratimoksha vows, then Bodhisattvas in Pure Lands would not have the Bodhisattva vow, and at death they would lose the Bodhisattva vow, and there would be many such faults. Here, Tokme Zangpo does not fully accept that one must possess a Pratimoksha vow before receiving the Bodhisattva vow. He does not accept this view. Why? He points out two major faults. If every sentient being who receives the Bodhisattva vow must have a Pratimoksha vow in their mind streams, then in pure lands such as Sukhavati or other pure lands, the Bodhisattvas there and the Buddhas in those pure lands would not have the Bodhisattva vow. Why? Because in their mind streams there cannot be renunciation. For example, beings in Sukhavati do not have the wish to renounce Sukhavati, according to the Abhidharma Kosha. This is also unreasonable. For example, Bodhisattva Maitreya in Tushita heaven, if a Pratimoksha vow were the basis, Bodhisattvas in pure lands would not have the Bodhisattva vow. This is the first fault. The second fault, if a Pratimoksha vow is required as a basis, then generally when a person dies, the Pratimoksha vow ceases. The vow is destroyed at death. In that case, the essence of the Bodhisattva vow would also be lost at death. Just as when a wall collapses, the patterns on the wall cannot remain. So he refuted this view. Moreover, in some Mahayana sutras, such as the Heap of Jewels Sutra, recorded that gods, nagas, non-humans, garudas, mahoragas, and various beings all have generated bodhicitta in their continuum. If a Pratimoksha vow were required, then they couldn't. So this view does not hold up from the perspective of scriptural authority and reasoning. There are many such faults. Therefore, all of these are explained in the commentaries. It is clear that Lord Atisha was thoroughly familiar with the Mahayana Dharma treasury and would never have accepted that the basis for the Bodhisattva vow must be possession of a Pratimoksha vow. Tokme Zangpo believes that, as we can see, Lord Atisha was thoroughly familiar with all Mahayana sutras and treatises. In India, both in the East and West, there was no one as renowned as Lord Atisha. Moreover, he had been a Pandita for 500 lifetimes. Once at the Vajra seat in India, Lord Atisha would often contemplate bodhicitta and altruism, whether walking, standing, sitting, or lying down. At the same time, he would circumambulate the stupa at Bodh Gaya. At that time, he arrived because at that time, there were Buddha halls on all four sides of the Bodh Gaya stupa. When he reached the west side, there was a stone Buddha statue. This Buddha statue spoke directly to Lord Atisha. It said, "If you wish to attain Buddhahood quickly, you must practice bodhicitta." This was the instruction to him. Later, when he circumambulated to the north side, there was a statue of Tara on the north side. This statue of Tara, her head turned and her body moved, and this can still be seen today. When His Holiness visited in 1990, he offered his mala to the talking Tara. Now people call this statue the talking Tara. She also gave teachings to Lord Atisha. There are two accounts. One is the holy image statue taught the Dharma to Lord Atisha. This is the first account. There is another account from history. When Lord Atisha came near the statue of Tara, in the sky there appeared two women, more beautiful than humans, but not as beautiful as goddesses. The two women began to converse in the sky. The younger woman asked the older one, "If one wants to attain Buddhahood quickly, what should one practice?" The other one replied, "To attain Buddhahood quickly, practice bodhicitta." Then she asked again, "What is the essence of all dharmas?" The answer was, "The essence of all dharmas is that all phenomena are included in mind, and mind is like space." Later, Lord Atisha understood the views of Yogacara and Madhyamaka through this verse. Then Lord Atisha said to those nearby, "Did you hear the conversation between the two women?" They all said they did not. Then Lord Atisha said, "That was a teaching from Tara." So, at all times, one should practice such bodhicitta. And after coming to the Tibetan regions, he also especially promoted bodhicitta. For such a great master, it is impossible to say that the basis for bodhicitta must be a pratimoksha vow. Lord Atisha would never accept such a view. And Tokme Zangpo believes, I believe that Lord Atisha actually said this to refute those who nowadays cannot even keep a single pratimoksha vow, yet claim to possess the bodhisattva vow, and those who think the bodhisattva vow is insignificant but has many rules. These are mistaken notions. Tokme Zangpo believes Lord Atisha was speaking from a strict standpoint. Why? Because nowadays some people cannot even receive and keep even a single pratimoksha vow. For such people, receiving the Bodhisattva vow is not appropriate. This is the point. Or some people think the Bodhisattva vow is easy and anyone can receive it. To prevent such thinking, Lord Atisha emphasized that the Bodhisattva vow is extremely rare and truly precious. So from this perspective, if one does not have the 7 types of pratimoksha vows, one cannot receive it. But it does not mean one must first receive a lay vow, or bhikshu or bhikshuni vow. It's not his true intent to say that only after having pratimoksha vows can one receive the Bodhisattva vow. It's not his meaning. This is how it is explained here. That is why it is said that the basis must be someone with pratimoksha vows. The auto commentary on the Bodhipattha Pradipa says, this is only to indicate a supreme basis. A supreme basis refers to the identity of one who receives the Bodhisattva vow is different. It is a very special kind of identity. It is to indicate that this is a supreme basis. But other bases can also give rise to the vow. Other bases, apart from the Pratimoksha vows, such as the 8 classes of gods and demons, and countless other celestial beings are suitable. Some Prajnaparamita sutras also say that when the Buddha turned the wheel of Dharma, many countless celestial beings generated bodhicitta in their mind streams and so on. There are such records. This means that other bases can also give rise to the Bodhisattva vow. Therefore, whether or not one has pratimoksha vows, it is possible. Either way is fine. The most important thing is altruism. As long as one has compassion, faith, and the wish to receive the vow, these 3 conditions first, we must have compassion. Without compassion, it is very difficult for Mahayana Dharma to take root in our hearts. So at all times, check whether we have compassion and altruism. This is extremely important. As Buddhists, whether monastic or lay, we should use our Buddhist view or our compassion to regard all sentient beings, especially when we see beings in need, no matter what their status. We should do our best to help. Sometimes in the world, there are people who are truly suffering, and we may not always notice them. If we do not notice them, that is something for us to reflect on. We could put it this way. Some people, wherever they are always able to notice those in need. They are very perceptive and sensitive to others. Today, I attended the opening ceremony of a Buddhist library and at a lecture. Someone shared their experiences, and something he said really moved me. He said, "Today I am among this group of intellectuals, but I myself do not have these qualifications. Because my family was very poor and life was very difficult. Today, even though I have not studied well, I am very happy to be here. This is not easy. Mainly, I owe my thanks to the kindness of some good people and teachers here. Their help has been indispensable. I really hope that more kind people in the world can help those who, like me, who encountered suffering." From his brief words, I thought, even if I do not know exactly who helped him, it is clear that in this world, there are some beings who suffer and are in pain. We should do our best to help them unconditionally. If we help them and they benefit from the Dharma, then I think their gratitude toward the Dharma and the Buddha will never fade. When they grow up throughout their lives, they will always remember the Buddha's compassion. They will have a deeply unforgettable feeling. So, as Buddhist practitioners, it is not just about seeking our own liberation every day. I don't think that is the most important thing. In daily life, when we see someone truly in need, whether others know or not, we should do your best to help them. If we cannot help them with the Dharma, then use material means or just comfort them spiritually. Even comforting them mentally is good. Helping them materially is also good. This is the conduct of a bodhisattva. Sometimes people tell me, I really want to help and I have some money, but I just can't find anyone in need. If what you say is true, go to a hospital or to a very poor village. You will definitely find someone to help. There are always people in need. There are many different ways to help sentient beings through the Dharma. Recently, we have been preparing to send some Dharma teachers to remote places in the Ngari region of Tibet. When His Holiness visited India in the past, he passed through there and was deeply moved. The material conditions there are very poor, but there is still some faith in the Buddha. But they have no idea how to practice Buddhism, how to recite the Buddha's name, how to visualize, nothing at all. So we plan to send a group of Dharma teachers there. Of course, there is nothing to offer them materially, and we require that they do not accept any offerings. Their food and lodging will all be provided by us. They will go there in person to different places to teach the Dharma and help the people to bring them benefit in all aspects. Some of the people trained here are very capable, and when they get there, gradually they may be able to help some people. In the past, some people from our institute went to very remote places, where even the name of the Dharma could not be heard. In such places, they gradually established Dharma centers and communities. Then they began to recite the Buddha's name. I think such activities are very much needed at present. Today, when I shared some of my thoughts, I also said that what we have learned, the compassion of Buddhism, we really want to share with society. There are many people in the world who have never tasted the nectar of the Dharma. If they could taste it as learned people, they would benefit greatly. So everyone here should check our status on our own compassion, faith, and wish to receive the vow. With these three prerequisites, we are qualified to receive the Bodhisattva vow. First, have compassion for those in need. Second, have faith in the treatises and vast activities of the Buddhas and Bodhisattvas. Third, be willing to receive the Bodhisattva vow. We should be willing to be such a person. In that case, in the continuum of such a person, no matter what, the Bodhisattva vow can arise. As long as one has compassion, faith, and the wish to receive the vow, sentient beings who possess these three mentalities, then the essence of the Bodhisattva vow will definitely arise in their minds. All right, we will stop here for today's teaching. Let us dedicate the merit together.
Bandara Banma Sodargye